Live from New Delhi, you're watching DD India News Hour, India's voice to the world. I'm Nipakshi Khurana, coming up in the next hour. Iran refuses to halt its nuclear program, including uranium enrichment, even as it accepts severe damage to its facilities after US strikes Iran, Russia and China to go into a huddle today. The Trump administration releases Martin Luther King Jr. assassination files despite concerns from the family that the records could be used for attacks on his enduring legacy. Vice President of India Jagdeep Dhankhar resigns from the post citing medical reasons, expresses gratitude to the President, Prime Minister Modi and members of Parliament for their support. ISRO set to launch NISAR, a joint satellite with NASA on the 30th of July. NASA-ISRO synthetic aperture radar will scan the entire globe every 12 days. And in chess, India's Divya Deshmukh stuns compatriot Harika Dronawali to enter the semi-finals of the FIDE Women's World Cup 2025. But on to the details now. A trilateral meeting between Iran, Russia and China will take place today to discuss Tehran's nuclear program and the United Nations snapback mechanism. The meeting between Iran, China and Russia will take place in Tehran at the level of Foreign Ministry Director Generals. Britain, France and Germany, known as the E3, have warned they would use the mechanism which would reimpose international sanctions on the Islamic Republic if there was no progress on nuclear talks by the end of August. Iran's Deputy Foreign Minister said there were currently no plans to resume nuclear talks with the United States, with whom Tehran held 5 rounds of indirect negotiations prior to Israel's strikes on Iran last month. Baghai will hold nuclear talks with the E3 and the European Union diplomats on Friday in Istanbul. Baghai added that Tehran would also seek answers because the countries did not condemn the Israeli and US strikes. And Iranian Foreign Minister Abbas Araghchi also said that Iran has no plans to abandon its nuclear program, including uranium enrichment, despite severe damage to its facilities after US strikes last month. He stressed that any future nuclear deal would have to contain the right to enrichment. Regarding negotiations with the United States to de-escalate regional tension, Araghchi said, "We are open to talks but not direct for the time being." Araghchi also confirmed that Iran would continue to develop and manufacture missiles. Araghchi's remarks come as Iran is set to hold new talks on its nuclear program with Germany, France and the United Kingdom on Friday in Istanbul.
It is now stopped because, yes, damages are serious and severe, but obviously we cannot give up our enrichment because it is an achievement of our own scientists, and now more than that, it is a question of national pride. If they are coming for a win-win solution, I am ready to engage with them. I mean that we are ready to do any confidence-building measure needed to prove that Iran's nuclear program is peaceful and would remain peaceful forever, and Iran would never go for nuclear weapons, and in return, we expect them to lift their sanctions. This is a win-win game, and we are ready to engage in that.
Meanwhile, Tehran blamed European powers for the failure of the 2015 nuclear deal, accusing them of breaking their commitments, which lifted sanctions on Iran in return for restriction on its nuclear program. The US withdrew from the pact in 2018. His remarks come ahead of a meeting on Friday in Istanbul between Iranian officials and representatives from Britain, France and Germany to discuss the future of the nuclear deal.
The European parties have been at fault, both due to negligence and failure to fulfill their obligations under the JCPOA.
And for more, we have Akshay Dongre joining us on this. Well, Akshay, how do you think the trilateral meeting, which is suspected between Iran, Russia and China, could influence the ongoing negotiations over Tehran's nuclear program, especially in the light of the US and Israeli strikes on Iran's facilities?
Well, Lipakshi, one thing has become clear that the US, as far as an independent participant to these negotiations, will not be engaging with Iran anytime soon. The discussions are going to take place between the Iranian regime and the representatives of the European Union. The second one is obviously, as we are talking about, talks between Iran along with China and Russia. The three countries will also be speculating and discussing the possible scenarios in the coming months, especially in the light with European Union saying that they will be coming back with sanctions if something meaningful is not achieved by the month of August. So we are almost there, and it doesn't seem that a lot of things are going to go in any positive direction at a very, very rapid pace, especially given the fact that we have almost a full-blown conflict between Iran and Israel just a few days back. So the situation still remains tense. However, one thing is extremely becoming clearer by the day, especially in the region, that there are now two sides that are getting divided. One is obviously the countries that are supporting the US, the initiatives of the US, are allies of the US and the European Union, and then with especially countries that have historically, have been against the U.S. Government and its involvement in the region. They have, started the side move with China, especially in the recent days, as well as Russia. So we can see clearly two blocks here getting divided. If you talk about any kind of progress towards peace, then that's not a good news, because clearly two sides are now getting marked very, very clearly, with Iran going to China and Russia. Clearly, what will be on the table will also be the sanctions that have been put in by the US, the European Union, the possibility of sanctions not only on Iran but on Russia as well in many aspects. China will also be discussing its own its own economic restrictions that have come, especially through the US in the recent days, and the way trade happens between these countries. So all of these aspects are going to be discussed when the three countries meet. But we can safely say that it will have a direct impact on the meeting between Iran and the European Union as well.
All right. Also, Akshay, with the growing tensions around Iran's nuclear ambitions, as we know, and the potential reimposition of sanctions to the UN's snapback mechanism, what do you see as the key challenge for these three countries, the E3, and in their upcoming talks with Iran? And what are the prospects for any meaningful progress?
Well, as far as the sanctions and these talks are concerned, we cannot expect a lot of breakthrough in these talks, is what everyone expecting. But certain progress is expected if Iran concedes to some of its ambitions and accepts some of the demands that have been met by the European side. Back to you, Pakshi.
All right, Akshay. Thank you so much for all those details. And moving on, the U.S. Justice Department unveiled over 240,000 pages of records tied to Dr. Martin Luther King Jr.'s assassination, including FBI files that surveilled and attempted to discredit him. The documents shared by the Director of National Intelligence, Tulsi Gabbard, online in the National Archives shed light on Cold War-era abuses. King, a civil rights icon, was killed in 1968. While broadening his mission to include economic justice and peace, his family called for empathy when reviewing the files and condemned misuse of the documents. The release follows similar disclosures about John and Robert Kennedy as part of a push for transparency ordered by the Trump administration. And in a latest update in Ukraine-Russia conflict, Russia and Ukraine will hold new peace talks on Wednesday as a follow-up to 2 rounds in Istanbul that made little progress on ending their conflict, Ukrainian President Volodymyr Zelensky announced. Zelensky said in his daily address on Monday that he had discussed with Rustem Umerov the preparation for a prisoner exchange and another meeting with the Russian side in Turkey. Earlier, Ukraine and Russia have held 2 rounds of talks in Istanbul that led to the exchange of thousands of prisoners of war and the remains of dead soldiers.
I discussed with Rustem Umerov the preparation for a prisoner exchange and another meeting with the Russian side in Turkey. Umerov reported that the meeting is planned for Wednesday. More details will follow tomorrow.
Завтра буде більше деталей.
Meanwhile, Ukrainian Foreign Minister Andriy Sybiha said Ukraine is ready for the 3rd round of negotiations with Russia in Istanbul and insists on a ceasefire. In a joint press conference with French Foreign Minister Jean-Noël Barrot in Kyiv, he emphasized that the Ukrainian side has yet to see such readiness from Russia, which is why Ukraine has proposed that any strategic discussions should take place at the level of President Zelensky and Putin, with involvement of the US and Turkish presidents as well as European leaders.
It is important that future talks, once the dates are agreed, are concrete, that the other side has the mandate to discuss the most important issues, such as ending the war, achieving ceasefire. So far, we have not noted this. Therefore, in order to be able to discuss such strategic issues, one of the proposals is to hold a meeting at the level of Zelensky and Putin with the participation of, this would be very beneficial, of US President Trump, European leaders, Turkish President Tayyip Erdogan.
Зеленський, Путін за участю, це би було дуже добре.
Well, earlier, Ukrainian President Zelensky appointed over a dozen new ambassadors during a big shake-up that has seen him replace top cabinet officials and envoys to shore up relations with Washington and isolate Russia internationally. According to decrees published on the presidential website, envoys to Spain, Estonia, Belgium and Japan, as well as to Canada, South Africa, Kenya and the United Arab Emirates were among the news appointees. And Germany and Norway have announced a tighter surveillance across the North Atlantic to counter growing maritime and airborne risks, particularly in light of ongoing tensions with Russia. Meeting in Berlin, Chancellor Friedrich Merz and Prime Minister Jonas Gahr Store emphasized protecting key regions such as the GIUK and the Bear Gaps, the crucial naval passages once closely monitored during the Cold War. In a joint statement, both countries reaffirmed strong support for Ukraine and committed to safeguarding underwater infrastructure. The move strengthens joint naval patrols and reflects deeper NATO coordination to enhance stability across the High North, North Sea and the Baltic regions. And US President Donald Trump was caught off guard by recent Israeli strikes in Syria. White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt on Monday said that Trump quickly called Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu to rectify the situation. Leavitt's comments came days after Israel launched airstrikes in Damascus, while also hitting government forces in the south, demanding they withdraw. Israel aimed to protect Syrian Druze, part of a small but influential minority that also has followers in Lebanon and Israel. The airstrikes blew up part of Syria's defense ministry and hit near the presidential palace.
Caught off guard by the bombing in Syria and also the bombing of a Catholic church in Gaza, which, as you know, I addressed at my briefing last week. And in both accounts, the president quickly called the prime minister to rectify those situations.
Well, EU's Defence Commissioner has said that Europe needs to boost its defence capabilities as the United States seeks to focus on countering China. In a speech in Washington, Andrius Kabelius said Europe is preparing to take responsibility for its own defence. President Donald Trump has pushed for increased military burden sharing with Europe since returning to office earlier this year, with NATO allies agreeing last month to boost their defence spending. The United States has for years identified China as its primary military rival and has sought to shift its focus and additional military assets to Asia. But unrest in the West Asia has repeatedly pulled American attention back to that region, with U.S. assets being shifted at least temporarily away from Asia as a result. And still to come in DD India News Hour. Bangladesh Air Force training jet crashed into school in Dhaka yesterday. White House restricts Wall Street Journal access to Trump over Epstein story. And Sakarya wildfires in Turkey rages into second day. Evacuation continues amid widespread summer blazes.
Economic challenges amid development. Hard work and the path to prosperity. It's the economy, always. Between walkers, money is what money does and says. Supply creates its own demand. Between the bulls pulls and bears tears. When supply chains globalization and India rises to the podium. We'll get you centered with the Economic Brief at 8 p.m. every Thursday on DD India.
Can the US launch a bombing campaign against Iran? The Philippines vessel suffered structural damage. The saga of child sexual abuse is the United States China's debt trap strategy. Truth is stranger than fiction. But sometimes hard to uncover. Trust us to tell the truth, unadulterated and pure.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News. I'm Lipakshi Khurana, and moving on. At least 22 people, including the pilot, were killed and 169 people were injured after a Bangladeshi Air Force jet crashed in Dhaka's northern area on Monday afternoon. The F-7 BGI aircraft of Bangladesh Air Force took off for a training flight and crashed shortly after into Milestone School and College campus. Bangladesh's F-7 is a modern variant of China's Chengdu J-7, which itself modeled on the Soviet MiG-21. Its production ceased after China delivered the last of 16 units of F-7 BGIs to Bangladesh in 2013. Authorities on Monday evening called off the operation to rescue the injured and recover the bodies of the dead following the incident. The Bangladesh government has declared a one-day state mourning following the incident. And for more, we have Navalsingh Parmar joining us from Dhaka on the phone line. Well, Navalsingh, how is the situation there right now? What more can be understood about the causes of the crash of the Bangladesh Air Force F-7 BGI? Navalsingh, am I audible to you? There seems to be a technical glitch. We'll try to connect with him later. And right now, moving on to our next story. Top U.S. officials promised President Ferdinand Marcos of the Philippines on Monday that Washington will defend its longtime ally and ramp up military resources aimed at deterring an assertive China, as he sat down with U.S. Secretary of State Marco Rubio to discuss regional diplomacy and bilateral relations. Well, Marcos is in Washington to meet with U.S. President Donald Trump on Tuesday, hoping Manila's status as a key Asian ally will secure a more favorable trade deal before an August 1st deadline. Earlier in the day, Marcos discussed security with the U.S. Secretary of Defense Pete Hegseth. Philippine officials say Marcos' focus will be on economic cooperation and Manila's concerns about the tariffs. They say he will stress that Manila must become economically stronger if it is to serve as a truly robust U.S. partner in the Indo-Pacific. And the White House on Monday barred the Wall Street Journal from traveling with U.S. President Donald Trump during his upcoming visit to Scotland. The move comes just days after Trump sued the Wall Street Journal and its owner Rupert Murdoch for at least $10 billion over the allegation related to Jeffrey Epstein in an article which Trump denies. Trump will head to Scotland next week, visiting areas where his family owns 2 golf courses and is opening a third. The President will meet British Prime Minister Keir Starmer to discuss trade ahead of an official state visit to Britain in September. And U.S. President Trump has ordered the Justice Department to release additional documents pertaining to its investigation into Jeffrey Epstein. Talking to media, White House Press Secretary Caroline Leavitt said the U.S. President has told Attorney General Pam Bondi and FBI Director Kash Patel to release any credible evidence that they find against Epstein.
Has told the Attorney General and the FBI Director to release any credible evidence that they find, and he also signaled to them over the weekend to move forward with unsealing the grand jury documents that were under seal by various judges across the country, and I believe the Attorney General has taken the proper legal action to do that.
Well, in the U.S., the Federal Aviation Administration said on Monday that it is investigating a near miss between a SkyWest Airlines jet and a U.S. Air Force B-52 bomber over North Dakota on Friday. Well, the SkyWest Flight 3788, operating as a Delta connection flight from Minneapolis to Minot, landed safely after executing a go-around when another aircraft became visible in its flight path. The pilot's announcement, recorded by a passenger, describes the tense moment as the crew spotted what appeared to be a military plane heading towards them. The pilot also noted that the lack of radar at the Minot Tower, which relies on visual observation, and questioned why no warning was issued about the presence of a B-52 in the pattern. The incident comes amid ongoing concerns over close calls between military and commercial aircraft. And Venezuela said on Monday it is opening a formal investigation into several Salvadoran officials, including President Nayib Bukele, over the alleged abuse of Venezuelan migrants deported from the U.S. Venezuelan Attorney General Tarek William Saab held a press conference on Monday to address the alleged mistreatment and talking about their experience at the prison. Well, Saab said officials have gathered 123 complaints of abuse, including reports of sexual assault, torture and beatings by Salvadoran prison guards. Also, more than 250 Venezuelans held in El Salvador's notorious CECOT prison returned to Venezuela on Friday under the terms of a prisoner exchange agreed with the United States. The released migrants have not yet been reunited with their families in Venezuela. Authorities said they are undergoing health, immigration and criminal background checks, among other procedures. And the leftist leaders of Spain and 4 South American nations met in Chile on Monday to appeal for unity in the face of U.S. protectionism and a rise in extremism worldwide. They gathered under the motto "Democracy Always" against the backdrop of U.S. President Donald Trump's expanding terror war and America's worsening ties with several erstwhile allies. Chilean President Gabriel Boric opened the summit with counterparts Luis Inácio Lula da Silva of Brazil, Gustavo Petro of Colombia, Uruguay's Yamanda Orsi and Spanish Prime Minister Pedro Sanchez. The topic is also at the heart of Brazil's ongoing clash with Trump's administration, which has targeted a judge who's involved in Bolsonaro's coup trial and has made a number of rulings against platforms and individuals spreading falsehoods online. Boric said he had invited Claudia Sheinbaum of Mexico, UK Prime Minister Keir Starmer and Canada's Mark Carney to the meeting, but they were unable to attend. And moving on, Gita Gopinath, the second in command at the International Monetary Fund, will step down at the end of August to return to her position at Harvard University. IMF said in a statement that the managing director, Kristalina Georgieva, will name a successor to Gopinath in due course. Gopinath, who had left Harvard to join the IMF, will return to the university as a professor of economics. Gopinath joined the fund in 2019 as chief economist, the first woman to serve in that role, and was promoted to the role of first deputy managing director in January 2022. In a farewell message, Gopinath expressed gratitude for a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity to work at the IMF, thanking both Georgieva and former IMF chief Christine Lagarde, who had appointed her as the chief economist. Well, a sweeping cyber espionage operation targeting Microsoft server software compromised about 100 organizations as of the weekend. Microsoft on Saturday issued an alert about active attacks on self-hosted SharePoint servers, which are widely used by organizations to share documents and collaborate within organizations. Dubbed Zero Day, the hacks allow spies to penetrate vulnerable servers and potentially drop a backdoor to secure continuous access to victim organizations. The Shadow Server Foundation confirmed the 100 figure. It said most of those affected were in the United States and Germany, and the victims included government organizations. Microsoft said it had provided security updates and encourages customers to install them. It was not clear who was behind the ongoing hack, but Alphabet's Google said it tied at least some of the hacks to a China Nexus threat actor. And planes and helicopters doused the flames of a wildfire in Turkey's northwestern province of Sakarya on Monday as the blaze entered its second day. Sakarya's governor, Rahmi Doğan, informed about the overnight damage of the 3 houses. According to Turkish news agency Anadolu, several villages in the vicinity of the wildfire have been evacuated. Notably, hundreds of wildfires have broken out across Turkey this summer, forcing tens of thousands of people to temporarily evacuate their homes across the country. And updates on Typhoon VIPA now. The typhoon made landfall along the coastal region of Vietnam this morning. Many areas in the Red River Delta, northern coastal provinces, Thanh Hoa and Nha Trang are experiencing heavy to very heavy rainfall. The typhoon is edging slowly towards Vietnam and is set to cross the coast near the northern port city of Haiphong around noon on Tuesday, bringing heavy rain that could lead to flash flooding. In response to Typhoon VIPA, military units have been deployed to secure homes, help residents move their belongings, and ensure vessels are relocated to safe anchorage points. Airlines have also cancelled and rescheduled dozens of flights, and some airport, port, and train services also have been suspended. Authorities in Hanoi also evacuated residents from an apartment building deemed to be particularly vulnerable to the storm's effects after making landfall. Typhoon VIPA is forecast to weaken to a low-pressure event on Tuesday night. Meanwhile, Thailand is expected to experience heavy rainfall, strong winds and dangerous sea conditions due to the influence of a strong southwest monsoon and the impending landfall of severe tropical storm VIPA. Typhoon VIPA is likely to trigger isolated heavy to very heavy rainfall in the north, northeast, central and eastern regions of Thailand. Residents in these areas are urged to remain vigilant as heavy rainfall may lead to flash floods and overflows, particularly in low-lying areas and near foothills. And still to come in DD India News Hour. We'll give you all the update from the monsoon session of the Parliament's legislative agenda. India and Korea Coast Guard held 13th high-level meet, cooperation in maritime search and rescue discussed. And security and logistical plans in place for Baba Buddha Amarnath Yatra as top officials review arrangements ahead of pilgrimage.
I'm Teresa from Austria, and I came with Stefan. He's also from Austria, and we came with our bicycles from Austria to India all the way. And we are very happy for being here in beautiful Kashmir because the landscape, it's amazing. We really love it a lot, and people are so nice and hospitable. It's a long journey, but it's very beautiful.
But we were here for hiking 5 days and we really love the landscape. It's so similar actually to the Austrian Alps that we felt home.
Welcome back. You're watching DD India News. I'm Lipakshi Khurana, and time now for a quick recap of the headlines. Iran refuses to halt its nuclear program, including uranium enrichment, even as it accepts severe damage to its facilities after US strikes Iran, Russia and China to go into a huddle today. The Trump administration releases Martin Luther King Jr. assassination files despite concerns from the family that the records could be used for attacks on his enduring legacy. The Vice President of India, Jagdeep Dhankhar, resigns from the post citing medical reasons, expresses gratitude to the President, Prime Minister Modi and members of Parliament for their support. ISRO set to launch NISAR, a joint satellite with NASA on the 30th of July. NASA-ISRO synthetic aperture radar will scan the entire globe every 12 days. And in chess, India's Divya Deshmukh stuns compatriot Harika Dronawali to enter the semi-finals of the FIDE Women's World Cup 2025. And moving on, in the latest development, India's Vice President Jagdeep Dhankhar has officially tendered his resignation, citing that he wishes to prioritize healthcare and abide by medical advice. The announcement came late on Monday evening through an official communique from the Vice President's official Twitter handle. 74 years, Jagdeep Dhankhar has been serving as the Vice President of India from 11th of August 2022 to 21st of July 2025. And now let's take a look at the legislative business for today in both the Houses of Parliament. In Rajya Sabha or the Upper House, Ports, Shipping and Waterways Minister Sarbananda Sonowal will move the Carriage of Goods by Sea Bill 2025 for consideration and passing. The bill attempts to modernize, update legal framework as well as enhance ease of doing business in India's maritime sector. In Lok Sabha or the lower house too, Union Minister Sarbananda Sonowal will move the Merchant Shipping Bill 2024 for consideration and passing. This bill was first introduced in the Lok Sabha on December 10, 2024. The bill will replace the Act of 1958 to registration and ownership of ships. It also provides for maritime training regulation and seafarer welfare. And earlier on Monday, the monsoon session began with the Lok Sabha paying tribute to the victims of the tragic Pahalgam terror attack and the recent Air India crash in Ahmedabad, with a major update coming from the Lok Sabha, which has decided to dedicate 18 long hours for discussion on Operation Sindoor. The decision by the Business Advisory Committee came after Defence Minister Rajnath Singh stated that the government is ready for a discussion, but only as per the rules set by the Speaker. Speaker Om Birla also expressed strong displeasure over repeated disruptions by the opposition. While in the Rajya Sabha, some legislative work did proceed. The leading bill was taken up and passed, even as opposition members voiced concerns. Both houses will reconvene today at 11 a.m., expecting to conduct legislative business smoothly over the week. And for more, we have Debyendu Mondal joining us for more on the Parliament. Well, Debyendu, in the Lok Sabha, there's been a significant focus on Operation Sindoor and the decision to dedicate almost 18 hours for discussion. Tell us what all transpired yesterday and what all is expected today.
Well, Lipakshi, good morning. Of course, the big news that we have in terms of what's coming in from the Parliament's lower houses, of course, the dedication of 18 long hours for discussion on Operation Sindoor. This has been one of the key demands of the opposition parties, because of which we also saw multiple disruptions since yesterday the Parliament session began. The Parliament had to be adjourned at least 3 times before it was adjourned after reconvening, twice after facing adjournments at 4 p.m. and then once again due to disruptions from the opposition parties, the Parliament had to be adjourned because the SAR point between what the opposition was demanding and what from the government was, of course, the discussion on Operation Sindoor, and particularly that Prime Minister Narendra Modi replies on the floor of the House on Operation Sindoor. But the Business Advisory Committee that met last afternoon in Parliament has decided to dedicate 18 hours for discussion on this particular issue. Now, this should settle all the SAR points that the opposition was trying to disrupt the Parliament for. But we'll have to wait and see how after the decision had come in, how the opposition reacts today inside the Parliament, because their primary demand that the discussion on Operation Sindoor should be held in the Parliament has been heeded to by the government. And yesterday we also saw Defence Minister Rajnath Singh saying that the government is not shying away from discussion on any topic that the opposition wants, and something as crucial as Operation Sindoor, the government is very much keen on discussion, and therefore 18 hours have been dedicated for that particular discussion. Now, of course, it will be interesting to see, as I said, how the opposition reacts to this decision, and of course it will also be extremely important to watch out for the discussion that happens in the lower house on Operation Sindoor and the government's response to it. Of course, the opposition has framed this strategy to corner the government on multiple issues with respect to Operation Sindoor, and we'll see a detailed response from the Defence Minister on how on how the Indian Army carried out the Operation Sindoor, going right inside Pakistan's heart and removing or targeting those terrorist camps that had been bleeding India through 1,000 cuts over many years. So therefore, it has been a very successful operation, as the Prime Minister also during his speech yesterday outside the Parliament addressing the media did talk about how the valor of the Indian armed forces and the prowess and the might of the Indian armed forces was displayed, and also how the indigenously made arms were used in Operation Sindoor and how that has been successful. So therefore, the debate is going to be absolutely important. And apart from that, Lipakshi, there are multiple other legislative businesses that the government is expecting to take up. And the Business Advisory Committee, one of the other key important bill is, of course, the income tax amendment bill. So that for that discussion of about 10 hours have also been allocated in the Lok Sabha. So therefore, the month-long Lok Sabha, the month-long parliamentary proceedings will have many important legislative bills and legislative discussions that takes place. And of course, it will be interesting to wait and watch how the opposition reacts in this session of Parliament. Dipakshi.
And moving on, after the Axiom 4 mission, the next space mission that all space scientists and enthusiasts are waiting for is NISAR, the NASA-ISRO synthetic aperture radar. On 30th of July at 1740 hours IST, ISRO's GSLV F-16 will launch NISAR, the first joint Earth observation satellite by ISRO and NASA from Sriharikota. NISAR will scan the entire globe every 12 days, providing high-resolution, all-weather, day and night data. It can detect even subtle changes in Earth's surface like ground deformation, ice sheet shifts, and vegetation dynamics. Well, the mission will support many critical applications, including the sea ice monitoring, ship detection, storm tracking, soil moisture changes, surface water mapping, and disaster response. A milestone marks over a decade of collaboration between ISRO and NASA.
To deliver high-resolution images across vast swaths of the Earth.
Well, NASA on Monday held a press conference on NISAR mission, where Wendy Edelstein, the Deputy Project Manager of NISAR at NASA Jet Propulsion Laboratory, enumerated the features of this mission. Take a listen.
The NISAR satellite is in India in its final preparations for launch, coming up on July 30th. I wanted to orient you to what NISAR is before we get too far along. So over here is a 1/3 scale model of what NISAR will look like when it's on orbit. What you see here is the spacecraft bus is this square cube over here on the right, and that's what provides all the services to operate the satellite. These solar array panels are attached to the spacecraft bus, and that's for powering the system. Now, this octagonal gold structure, that's what houses the two radar systems, and I'll talk more about those in a moment. But the radars are then used to illuminate this very large antenna you see here, and that's probably the most prominent feature that the NISAR satellite.
All right, and for more on this, we have Dr. SV Sharma, former Deputy Director, ISRO, joining us, and my colleague Siddharth Bharadwaj also joining us. Well, welcome to DD India, sir. My first question to you, Siddharth, I just wanted to ask that why NISAR set to launch by July 30th. What are some of the most groundbreaking features of this satellite, and how does it set apart from the previous Earth satellites?
All right, a very good morning to you, Lipakshi, and certainly it's a dynamic collaboration, between NASA and ISRO. Who made this satellite, NISAR, which stands for the NASA-ISRO Synthetic Aperture Radar. This satellite will be sent to space, Lipakshi, as per the details that we are getting in from the Satish Dhawan Space Center in Sriharikota on 30th of July at around 5:40. IST, 1740 IST. It will certainly change the dynamics. It will certainly change the way we look at our planet Earth, because, this technology is not just restricted to the United States or to India, but to the entire planet. It is a Earth observation satellite, and it will give the all-weather day and night data with the interval of every 12 days. So that's, that's where it holds a great significance. As far as the technology is concerned, then this satellite will be sent to space by ISRO's GSLV F-16, and it will provide some critical details. It will also study the evolution of Earth's crust. Apart from that, oil spill and natural disasters, it will further help the researchers. Lipakshi, now, if we talk about the technology, then some technologies which are being used in this particular satellite is being used for the first time. For example, if we talk about the technology, then it's a dual frequency SAR, and it also uses the sweep SAR technology. When I talk about it, let's just simplify that. These technologies will give the HD resolution images. When you get the HD resolution images of Earth, it will further help researchers, to study more about Earth, that what's there and what's causing one particular thing. This particular satellite will also tell you anything, when it comes to the Earth's surface. Even a minute change in the Earth's surface will be detected by this satellite. So when I say this, Lipakshi, let's further break it down. When you talk about ground reforming, when you talk about ice sheet movements, when you talk about vegetation, dynamics, it will help in that. So when I talk about the ground deforming, there are some places wherein the impending earthquake and volcanoes are there, so it can detect that. So meaning more and more people could be evacuated, saving millions of lives. Also, when you talk about the ice sheet movements, Lipakshi, it's about it tells you about the rise in sea level. So the rise in sea level usually affects the coastal areas and the island nations. So people from there could further be evacuated. Property could be saved. An important things which are there in the property could be saved. Apart from that, when I talk about the vegetation dynamics, it will tell you about the soil moisture and certain other things, further giving the food security. So in many ways, this satellite is going to help the researchers, and also not just researchers. It will also help farmers. It will also, in growing cities as well, Lipakshi, it will also tell you about whether the area is sinking. Further preventing the bridges and roads to collapse unexpectedly. So all in all, it's a dynamic and it's a great collaboration. It also tells you about...
In addition to the great collaboration, it is surely, Siddharth, a big breakthrough as well.
India's space program, India's space technology that has come so far is certainly, commendable. In fact, Prime Minister Narendra Modi, before the start of monsoon session yesterday, also heaped praise on Shubhanshu Shukla, and he said that it's a matter of pride for around 1.4 billion people, and it certainly speaks volumes about the fact that how far the space technology has come, and it's certainly a matter of pride, and indeed a great collaboration again between NASA and ISRO. Back to you, Lipakshi.
All right, a matter of great pride, of course. Sir, I want to ask you, this is the first time NASA and ISRO have collaborated on an Earth observation satellite of this scale. How significant is this?
Good morning, Lapaksha, and good morning to million DD viewers. Of course, it is the great moment for this country. For the first time in the world, we have such a satellite for the civilian usage, and also the first time in the history of ISRO and in the history of this country, we have such a collaboration where a satellite of more than 3,400 kg is being made. It has taken nearly 12 years to Pakshi. Remember, it is a very complex satellite with L-band and S-band SAR, and this satellite, which as was detailed by you, provides a very useful information in terms of the common man. Basically, we are trying to reach every common man. How you try to save every common man and to serve every common man is the goal of this particular NISAR satellite. As we can see, there is L-band and S-band synthetic aperture radar, which is the first time in the world that such a 12-meter antenna has been used for L-band SAR. And here there are two payloads. As I said, L-band SAR is supplied by the NASA, and the S-band SAR is made by ISRO itself. And this satellite also has a payload component as well as the bus component. The entire bus system is being done by ISRO. A bus system meaning electrical system, mechanical system, the propulsion, the control systems, the data recording, data movement, and the communication systems. Entire the bus system, which is a cuboid, is being completely done by ISRO, and the S-band SAR is done by this Space Application Center, of course, a part of ISRO. Therefore, there is a contribution, equal contribution from NASA as well as ISRO. And also, please remember, this is one of the most expensive satellites which the country has made. Maybe it is about 9,000 crores is approximately the cost which has been estimated to be. And one of the most heaviest satellites of this class, which is about 2,400 kg. And on liftoff, it could be even going up to 3,400 kg with the fuel added. So this is one of the most prestigious satellite as far as both NASA, ISRO as an organization concerned, and ISRO India and the US in large is concerned. Of course, there were earlier many such collaborations, but the scale at which such an activity has been done over the period of 10 to 12 years, please remember that these two organizations, that these two countries have been working continuously to make this one of the most complex satellites. And several challenges were faced while making the satellite, specifically in terms of the L-band SAR, which is one of the most complex payloads which the world has seen. I can say it is going to serve the humanity, 140 crore people in particular, and the billions of people at large. And 12 days revisit of this satellite provides an extremely useful high-resolution data with which you can compare the data of the last pass to this pass, and it has a swath of about 250 kilometers approximately. And that is one of the greatest requirement where the specifically the disaster management, the vegetation, the ice movement, the way the glaciers are happening, the way the erosion or the developments are happening in the earth, which is one of the most important satellite and one of the most important requirement with which these satellites are going to serve. More than anything, even the detection of the changes in the Earth's surface where there can be a disaster, where millions of people and billions of people can be saved with the advanced warning that this satellite carries is something which is really of immense help and importance. And this also has many other technological and technical challenges in terms of building the satellite itself. It is such a huge, satellite that even the transportation, etc., had been a very big challenge. And the 12-meter antenna, whatever you are seeing on the TV screen, is folded while launching. It is called as stowing condition. The antennas will be stored, and also the solar panels will be stored. It will be like a cuboid when it is being launched. So you can see the way it is cuboid will be launched. And
right,
once
sir.
the launch happens, the deployment of the solar panel happens for the first time, and then the power supply will be available for the satellite for remaining operations such as deployment of other antennas, etc. Over Pakshi.
Right, sir. Sir, as you also mentioned, and we know that NISAR promised us to scan the entire Earth every 12 days with unmatched accuracy. Given the satellite's ability to detect even slight changes in the Earth's surface, how could it be used to track and mitigate the impact of climate change, especially in the vulnerable regions we're facing right now, like the Himalayas or the coastal India?
basically, this is, we should remember this is a radar. This is a synthetic aperture radar. This is the first time which such a synthetic aperture radar is being made, where you can find the changes in the weather conditions, also atmospheric conditions, I should say, that the way the winds are moving, the way the temperature is changing, the way the changes on the Earth's surface is happening. So whenever you detect, say for example, volcanic eruption, say for example, changes in the sea, etc. How we detect, disaster is always to find a change. Now the weather, the wind speed is about say 50 kilometers per hour, and when the wind speed is expected to be 100 kilometers, if you are able to detect it, in advance, then there can be a disaster, warning system with which several lives could be saved. Basically, from the point of view of looking at the atmospheric condition, looking at the sea condition, looking at the various temperatures which on the surface of the Earth, which the satellite will be able to detect day in, day out. Please remember, it is a day in, day out satellite. So for irrespective of the availability of light, sunlight, or with the absence of sunlight, these satellites can give the data, which is extremely important. That's why this satellite has, got the attention of the entire world, and also the country is looking forward for this satellite to be launched and the services to be made
Absolutely,
available,
sir. We're looking forward for the launch.
Every farmer, every fisherman, and every human being on this Mother Earth.
Absolutely, rightly said. Every Indian is looking forward for the launch. Siddharth, my next question to you. What role did Indian scientists and engineers play in the development of NISAR, and what components or systems were developed indigenously?
Oh, definitely, Lipakshi. The Indian scientists have played a pivotal role, in fact, in this joint collaboration, which is the first collaboration between NASA and ISRO. When I talk about the technology which is being used, is the dual frequency SAR, which is being used in that, with L band by NASA and S band by ISRO. Both the sides have equally contributed to this satellite. Again, I would like to say that, the space technology that India has now, the world look at India, the way India has positioned itself on the world map, the technology which we are using, everyone is praising India. The journey has come so far, and this satellite will actually tell about the minutest details, even if it's a minute a change in the Earth's surface, Lipakshi. So that way it will also help scientists, it will also help researchers, and not just that. Apart from that, a farmer sitting at his house, the satellite would also help the farmer, because it will tell you about the moisture, it will also tell you about the soil moisture and how the rain patterns work. So according to that, a farmer could be well prepared for their crops. So in that manner, this technology is going, this satellite is going to help, like researchers and farmers. Apart from that, when you talk about the technology, I also mentioned, the L bands by NASA and S bands by ISRO.
Right.
The technology which is being used, the sweep SAR technology is used in this satellite, which will further give the high resolution images. It helps a lot to the researchers who is doing research. This satellite will further tell about the evolution of Earth's crust, which is very, very important, right, in research regarding how the weather patterns behave and how the Earth behaves. And apart from that, the technology, like I just mentioned, which will be used in this satellite, will be beneficial for everyone. Because like I said, it's not just restricted to the United States or India. It will scan the entire Earth in a gap of 12 days. So that way, it's very, very crucial. Apart from that, Lipakshi, when it comes to the space program, India's space program, when it comes to India's space technology, everyone is looking at India, and also it aligns with India's vision of Viksit Bharat 2047. Everyone is also, in a recent example, I would like to, tell that it was it was indeed a proud moment for the entire country when Shubhanshu Shukla went to the International Space Station, becoming the first Indian, to be there on this International Space Station, and second Indian to be on the space. The experiments which he conducted there will help from agriculture sector to the space sector.
Right.
So yeah, definitely India's space program has come a long way, and it's being appreciated by the entire world. Lipakshi, back to you.
Right. Thank you so much, Siddharth. And thank you so much, Dr. Sharma, for joining us and giving us all those details. And moving on to some sports update now. India's Divya Deshmukh defeated compatriot Harika Dronawali on tie breaks to enter the semi-finals of the FIDE Women's World Cup 2025. Divya drew both Game 1 and Game 2 of the quarter-finals against Harika to take the contest to tie breaks. Divya went on to beat her senior in consecutive games in tie breaks to book a spot in the semi-final, where she will meet China's Tan Zhongyi. Divya joins Kaneru Hampi in the last four stage. Hampi beat China's Yuksin Song in the quarterfinals to become the first Indian to enter the semi-final stage of the World Cup. Hampi will face China's Inle Tingje, the Game 1 of the semi-finals, beginning on Tuesday. All right, that's all for this edition of DD India News Hour. But let us know your thoughts on the news of the day. For those on the go, you can get all the latest news and updates from India and across the world on the DD India mobile app. The app is available on both Android and iOS platforms. Scan the QR code on the screen to download now. We'll be back with more news as it breaks here on DD India. I'm Lipakshi Khurana from Al Fasair in Delhi. Thanks for watching DD India News Hour.